Good night, everyone. We are beginning lesson 2, the parable of the Pharisee and the Publican. The reading is taken from Luke chapter 18, verses 9 to 14. I'm reading from the English Standard Version. He also told this parable to some who trusted in themselves that they were righteous and treated others with contempt. 2 men went up into the temple to pray, one a Pharisee and the other a tax collector. The Pharisee, standing by himself, prayed thus: God, I thank you that I am not like other men, extortioners, unjust, adulterers, or even like this tax collector. I fast twice a week. I give tithes of all that I get. But the tax collector, standing far off, would not even lift up his eyes to heaven, but beat his breast, saying, God, be merciful to me, a sinner. I tell you, this man went down to his house justified rather than the other. For everyone who exalts himself will be humbled, but the one who humbles himself will be exalted. Now, before we get into the questions, what I noticed was that they didn't ask for a background. Last lesson, as well as this lesson, they did not ask for the background for the lesson, but I still have one. So I'll read the background for the lesson and then we could start the questions. The setting for this parable is the temple in Jerusalem, which was the designated place of prayer. The times of prayer were 9 a.m. and 3 p.m., but men went there at any time if they were near or desired to pray. If one was far away, he directed his prayer toward the temple at the appropriate time. An example of this is Daniel, while in Babylonian captivity, praying 3 times daily at his window, which faced Jerusalem. That's in Daniel chapter 6, verse 10. In this story, 2 men went to the temple to pray, a Pharisee and a publican. These 2 men represent the extremes of the Jewish religious and social classes of that day. The Pharisees were a religious group, and they were the strictest sect of the Jews. The sentiments of their beliefs began in the hearts and minds of the Jews after their return to the land of Israel from Babylonian captivity, in accordance to the decree of Cyrus in 539 BC. That is described in Ezra chapter 1, verses 1 to 4. Some of the returning captives believed in a strict separation between themselves and the neighboring heathen peoples. Eventually, these Jews became known as Pharisees or separatists, which is the meaning of the word. The Pharisees were careful students of the law of Moses and interpreted the law with exactness, but to the written law, they added their traditions. They believed that additions to the written law had been spoken by Moses to the elders of Israel, and that these additions had been passed orally down through the ages, with the prophets also making additions. Thus, these oral additions to the law, numbering in the thousands, covered every action of their daily lives and became traditions to be followed as carefully as the written law. Consequently, the Pharisees separated themselves from those who did not strictly observe these traditions, shunning social contacts and business dealings with them. Becoming haughty and self-righteous, they divided all mankind into two classes, themselves and the rest of the world. Next, the publicans. The Roman governors were in charge of all financial matters. The general or direct taxes were collected by Roman officers as part of their official duties. These taxes went into the imperial treasury and were very heavy. A census was taken by the Romans in Egypt, and thus perhaps throughout the whole empire, every 14 years. The purpose of the census was to levy a poll tax, a tax for the privilege of existing. In addition, the Romans required a certain amount of customs or tolls from a specified area. The right to collect these taxes was sold to the highest bidders, called publicans. These publicans or tax collectors paid to Rome the required amount of taxes and then kept for themselves anything they collected over that amount. There were import and export taxes on everything that went in and out of the country, taxes for entering a walled city, market, or harbor, taxes for crossing a bridge, taxes for using roads, taxes on carts hauling merchandise, taxes on each wheel of the cart, taxes on the animal pulling the cart. Naturally, these publicans were extremely unpopular, for many were dishonest and made their living by extorting high taxes from the citizens. Those publicans who were Jews were doubly despised by their fellow countrymen for selling themselves to the Romans. They were considered as sinners and renegades. This parable thus contrasts the haughty, self-righteous attitude of the Pharisee with the humble manner of the publican. The Pharisee prayed a short prayer of eyes. 5 times the Pharisee said I in his prayer. Although the law set aside one day of the year for fasting, the Day of Atonement, known as Yom Kippur, this man fasted twice weekly according to the traditions of the Pharisees. The law required tithing of the fruit of the field and the firstlings of the flocks and herds. But this man gave in addition tithes of the tiny herbs of the garden, according to the traditions of the Pharisees. In his prayer, this Pharisee asked for nothing, confessed nothing, and contrasted his virtues to the sins of the publican. The publican, meanwhile, stood afar off. He did not lift his eyes to heaven, but smote his breast and prayed for mercy. Okay, so you can answer the questions first. Who went up to the temple to pray?
2 men went up to the temple to pray, a Pharisee and a publican.
Right, good. I have the same thing. And then describe the Pharisee and describe the publican.
The Pharisee was very proud. He spoke of all the good things he had done and how he was better than other people. He looked down on others, and his prayer was about himself. The publican or tax collector was humble. He asked God to only have mercy on him because he was a sinner. His faith made him ask for forgiveness.
Right. The Pharisee was self-righteous, haughty, and proud. He believed he was justified before God, for he had not only kept the law, he had gone beyond it. The publican was humble. He humbled himself and asked for mercy from God. And with whom did the Pharisee compare himself in his prayer?
The Pharisee compared himself to other people, cheaters, sinners, adulterers, and tax collectors, and he scorned them all.
Right. So he compared himself to extortioners, the unjust adulterers, and even the tax collector. And he believed that he was better than all of them. And to whom did Jesus say the Pharisee prayed?
The Pharisee prayed to God, but he prayed about himself.
Right. And some manuscripts also have the wording that he prayed the prayer to himself, which is interesting. And what is the character of his prayer?
The Pharisee's prayer was about himself. His prayer was more a boast to himself than an expression of worship toward God.
I have the character of his prayer was one of pride. And what did the publican pray?
The publican prayed and asked for forgiveness. He made a confession of his sin and asked God for mercy.
Right. So he humbly asked God, God be merciful to me, a sinner. And what is the character of his prayer?
The tax collector's prayer was humble, repentant, and asking for forgiveness.
Right. So I have the character of his prayer was one of humility. And who went home justified, and on what basis did Jesus make this determination?
The publican, not the Pharisee, returned home justified before God. And this is because Jesus said, those who exalt themselves will be humbled, and those who humble themselves will be exalted.
Right. I have the same thing. And then what is the great lesson from the parable of the Pharisee and the publican for us today?
Those who come to God with humility and ask for forgiveness are more acceptable to God than the righteous who make no confession of their sins. Faith and humility are characteristics followers of Jesus should have.
So I have Jesus stated the lesson of the parable that everyone that exalteth himself shall be abased, and he that humbleth himself shall be exalted. And those who are humble, asking for God's mercy, will be justified. But those who are self-righteous, confessing nothing and asking for nothing, God will resist. So did you have any questions or comments based on this lesson?
It was kind of like the parable of the prodigal son.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
So it's I think we might not be
But not as
Ah.
like this one was a little more like I feel this one was a little more extreme because because the other son they didn't really show him as like scorning people, and it
Yeah.
was just he was there, he was doing the work, he was doing his part, and it was only when the brother came back that he really showed any kind of animosity.
Yeah. So I think it is, we might not be as, it might not be as bad as the Pharisee, but I think it's easy for us to kind of be a little bit self-righteous.
Mm-hmm.
And we need to kind of watch out for that. Because the Pharisee he didn't know he would, like, as you know, as bad as he was, he had not a clue that he was self-righteous. He thought he was great. So we could just as easily be deceived in ourselves, thinking that we, reaching some sort of spiritual height by praying and fasting. But you have to watch out for that sort of attitude of feeling that you're better than somebody else or looking down on other people. And the thing is, he didn't. He reached the stage where he didn't even bother to pray for mercy or forgiveness, which is like an extreme kind of position.
I said, then too, he would have been part of a group of people who would have been doing the same thing, and essentially they would have all been hyping each other up.
Right. So it's like the kind of echo chamber where you, the only thing you hear is people who agree with you and they have the same kind of opinion of you as you.
Yeah.
So that is what, like, it have some sort of churches where the culture is like very pharisaical, but that's the thing. That's the only thing they're hearing. Yeah, that kind of critical, judgmental spirit. You have to like make sure you watch out for that.
Yeah, because it's very easy to judge other people.
Right, yeah. I mean, because they are actually doing, because the tax collector actually, the things that he listed, they were people who were doing the wrong thing. Right? He listed like he listed the adulterers. That's wrong. Extortioners, wrong. Tax collectors, what they were doing was wrong. It was unjust. So the stuff he listed, it wasn't like they were doing the right thing and he was looking down on them. It's just he should probably have been praying for them.
That's the next thing, right?
He should have been praying for God's mercy for him and them.
There's one thing, right? Oh, it's
Yeah.
like all the tax collectors is be grouped in with these sinners, right? But that wasn't just their job. Like they didn't have to do that. Like they didn't have a choice. They had to do it.
No, they had a choice. Nobody forced them to be a tax collector. So it was the system is not like now where it's just a simple job. Is the system was corrupt.
Okay.
Like remember in I think it was Barbados where we went and people didn't even want to walk on the side of the road where the tax people where the inland revenue was.
No, I
And
can't remember.
imagine that like 10 times more. Not 10 times more, 20 times more. It would be a lot worse. Like because those taxes, they were extreme. All right. You want to choose a song?
Okay.
Yeah.
I will be reading Psalm 86 from the King James Version. A prayer of David. Bow down thine ear, O Lord, hear me, for I am poor and needy. Preserve my soul, for I am holy. O thou my God, save thy servant that trusteth in thee. Be merciful unto me, O Lord, for I cry unto thee daily. Rejoice the soul of thy servant, for unto thee, O Lord, do I lift up my soul. For thou, Lord, art good, and ready to forgive, and plenteous in mercy unto all them that call upon thee. Give ear, O Lord, unto my prayer, and attend to the voice of my supplications. In the day of my trouble I will call upon thee, for thou wilt answer me. Among the gods there is none like unto thee, O Lord, neither are there any works like unto thy works. All nations whom thou hast made shall come and worship before thee, O Lord, and shall glorify thy name. For thou art great and dost wondrous things. Thou art God alone. Teach me thy way, O Lord. I will walk in thy truth. Unite my heart to fear thy name. I will praise thee, O Lord my God, with all my heart, and I will glorify thy name forevermore. For great is thy mercy toward me, and thou hast delivered my soul from the lowest hell. O God, the proud are risen against me, and the assemblies of violent men have sought after my soul, and have not set thee before them. But thou, O Lord, art a God full of compassion and gracious, long-suffering, and plenteous in mercy and truth. O turn unto me, and have mercy upon me. Give thy strength unto thy servant, and save the son of thine handmaid. Shew me a token for good, that they which hate me may see it, and be ashamed. Because thou, Lord, hast hope on me, and comforted me. Amen.
Amen.